Howdy and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone at Will Stone CFB. You can subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast. That is the Ineligibles podcast. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. This is probably going to go well over an hour. We've got A&M Auburn. We've got the SEC schedules being released, the permanent opponents, and just an absolutely loaded week of football games in week five. I will be at the Auburn game this weekend with my brother at 2:30 on whatever channel it's on. But man, if you're if you're not at a college football game, this is one of those weekends where you just you know you start game day at 8 a.m. and then you watch just all the way through because it is just completely loaded slate of big time games. Probably one of the best that we've seen in a long time. And A&M Auburn is, kind of towards the back of that group with some of the bigger names like Oregon at Penn State, obviously Alabama at Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, among plenty of others. But let's start with the big news. The SEC, the permanent opponents got leaked on Monday, and then the rotating opponents, so the full 9 game schedule for each SEC team was released last night on the SEC network. And from an A&M perspective, I think we fared pretty well. I mean, I think all in all, I think they did probably as good a job as they could do when you have 16 teams and you can't just give everyone the hardest opponents, and you have to respect some rivalries and things like that. But all in all, I mean, I'd give it a solid A, or 9 out of 10. I don't really know what I would do differently if I were them. But from an A&M perspective, they're three permanent opponents that they will play every single year. Which, by the way, this gets reevaluated every 4 years. So this 4 years is set 26 through 29. But they could reconfigure it after that. Also, the conference could look different after that because TV deals are running out in other conferences, and that kind of thing. So, sorry, let me share these real quick. So A&M, they end up with Texas, with LSU, and Missouri as the third one. We all knew the first two were pretty much a lock. I think early on, maybe even a year ago, when the idea of a 9 game schedule was first getting kind of thrown around, the word back then was Texas, LSU, and Mississippi State, which would have been fine. I know a lot of our fans think Arkansas makes a lot of sense, which it does. When you look at Arkansas's, they kind of ran out of teams to they filled up too fast. I mean, I think I've got them all pulled up right here. So they got LSU, they played them for a long time annually, and then Missouri, and then Texas. So I think Missouri makes sense from a geographic standpoint. And I believe that game is on Thanksgiving weekend now, but really good for geography. Did they not get stuck with? Uh, I thought they got no. I'm thinking of Missouri. Missouri got put with Oklahoma, not Arkansas. So yeah, Arkansas has LSU, Missouri, and Texas. Obviously, them and Texas go way back to the 70s and 60s. Missouri is kind of a newer rivalry, but good for geography. And then LSU, a pretty long-standing rivalry. They played them for a long time, so they get to keep that game and keep that old SEC feel. I know our fans are upset that we're playing an old Big 12 team, but that doesn't really bother me. I mean, I would rather have it this way and get to play all the other teams every other year, and then be the way that it's been, where you know you play Georgia once every 7 years, or Kentucky once every 7 years, and that's just it makes no sense. This way, every team will play the entire conference every 2 years, and you will host and visit every team every 4 years. That's great for fans. Like, this feels like a conference now. It's hard with 16 teams, but I think 9 games was a must. I think it was to keep some long-standing rivalries and to adjust to having 16 teams in the conference. I think 9 games. I think it worked out pretty well. I mean, the ACC I think is in a mess because they have an odd number of teams, and there's no like mathematical way to that they can even really do it. So they're kind of struggling. But you know, it's 9 SEC opponents every single year. A mandate that's it's been a mandate for a decade, if not longer, to have at least one Power Five or Power Four now non-conference opponent, which A&M, they, used to. I was telling someone this last week that they schedule those games, used to it was a decade in advance. You had your, like that Notre Dame game we played last week or 2 weeks ago was announced about 10 years ago, and as of right now, we only have the next 4 years. So we have the next 4 years. We know all of our opponents, at least the main ones, right? Because we've got 4 years of SEC games, and we've got 4 years of non-con opponents from the Power Four ranks with Arizona State the next 2 years, and then Louisville the two after that. 2030 and beyond is a little less is not been scheduled at this point. So, but man, like you look at these schedules, and yeah, like it's tough. I feel like the road games next year are a bit of a gauntlet, but I mean that's life in this league. I mean, I want to play these teams. I don't want to be, you know, to be frank, I don't love our home schedule this year. I mean, the biggest game is going to be Auburn, this weekend. We only get four. At least now on off years, you'll either have 5 home SEC games, or you'll have 4 with a good team like Arizona State or Louisville also on the home schedule that year. And then when you have 5 conference games, that game will be away in the non-con. So I think this is much better for season ticket holders. The Jerry World game with Arkansas is gone, which it's been gone, or it's gone as of, I guess, as of this year. But did we play them last year? Yeah, we did it up there. Yeah, so last year was the last year of it. But now, like, there's no more neutral site. It's all, on campus. So next year's schedule, we have Texas at home. The home slate is Texas, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. The away games, which is pretty tough, it's LSU, Missouri, Alabama, South Carolina, and Oklahoma. That's going to be every single year. 2027, you're at Texas, at Auburn, at Florida, at Mississippi State. You host LSU, Missouri, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt. I mean, that's awesome. Like, I mean, I'm already making plans for, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss at home. That's badass. I love it. 2028 is insane. So that year we will play in the non-con. We will have Louisville at home, Texas at home. Also at home are Alabama, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. I mean, that's, who knows what South Carolina looks like at that point, but Texas, Bama, OU, and then Louisville, like that's a great home slate for season ticket holders and for this program. So yeah, I mean, I know everyone's, we've been in the league for however many years, and Georgia's never played here before. They will come here in 2027. We'll get the Alabama game back every other year. Ole Miss, it's a lot better for the fan experience, and just better for the sport, I think. I mean, I know some folks have, not ridiculed it, but there are games that aren't being played every year, like Alabama LSU. That game will not be played every year. Alabama Georgia will not be played every year. but even like, I think the other ones, that I have a bigger issue with is like Tennessee, Florida. Not every year anymore. Um, Tennessee instead gets Alabama, which is their oldest rival, and then Kentucky and Vanderbilt. So you have to put those teams somewhere. Like Vanderbilt makes like they had to get Vanderbilt. That's an in-state team. Just a couple hours down the road. That makes sense, but someone has to play Kentucky, and Mississippi State, and it's that's kind of the downside. But there's not really any way around it. That you don't get Tennessee, Florida, and those types of games, every single year. But yeah, I think all in all, it worked out really well. Another thing for A&M is, you know, I'm not thrilled about back-to-back years at LSU, in Baton Rouge, which is a very hard place to play, especially for us. But I like that it splits up Texas and LSU. Each year, one of those is home, one's away. I like having it that way. I'm glad they did it that way. We also get pretty fortunate. The two biggest things here are I think, splitting up Texas and LSU, the home and away, and then having Alabama and Georgia on alternate years. So Texas did not get that. Texas has a year where they'll play neither Bama or Georgia, and then they'll play them both every other year. And those do alternate home and away in those years, but still, like a schedule with A&M, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Bama. That's a pretty that's and plus like they tip of the cap, they do a good job of scheduling tough games out of conference. So yeah, it's going to be tough for everyone, but I think from an A&M perspective, this was about as good as you could have hoped for. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun moving forward. Have you heard why we are playing? Yeah, so Colson asked a question. Shout out to Colson Pluff. I don't get the Missouri. I guess I'm less sure about the Missouri one, but they it probably just made it probably helped them out to make sense when they're trying to schedule, for 16 teams, who's home and who's away. So yeah, like it's kind of picking nits that and not that Missouri's like a really hard place to play. They're a really good team, but I think if you gave me the choice of back to back at Texas or back to back at LSU, even though LSU is more difficult, I'd rather do that. I don't want to give Texas an extra home game against us. Sorry. I'd rather them just have to come right back and not give them two. So yeah, that's kind of why they did that to get those split back up and alternate those throughout the future. JT, my man, I'm shortchanging Drink a little bit, but I feel Mizzou is a year away from becoming a Kentucky S team. They will not thrive in the new format. Excited to have them as our annual. Disrespectfully, JT. I would disagree a little bit. I think some of Drinkowitz's antics are pretty cheesy. I think he's a bit of a nerd, but I will say he can coach some football. He did what Jimbo wouldn't do and gave up play calling to someone else, even though he's the offensive guy. And they've, last year was a bit of a down year, even though they, brought the quarterback and the receivers back. But look at them this year, and I know they haven't played, just the hardest teams. Their toughest games have been Kansas and South Carolina, both of which were at home. But they look a lot better than they did last year. They've got some NIL money. It's not, it's probably not Texas or Texas A&M or Georgia, but it's pretty solid. And we had to really fight to flip, Jamarian Morrow and Lamont Rogers from them late in the process. Which you look at at their ability to evaluate players and go in and pull in Ahmad Hardy. He may be a top five back in the country this year, and they pulled him from ULM, and he looks like what Jamarian Morrow will look like in a few years. If they had kept Morrow, he would have been a stud for them, in a couple years. A&M gets him from them. I would, I think Missouri's one of those teams I would look at, like them in Utah are guys I would look at, like who are they offering at certain spots, and I would, you know, start digging a little bit deeper in some of those guys. But I think it's a tough game. I think the venue is not as tough. Like I don't think that their stadium, which they're renovating it, but it's not a intimidating place to play, like maybe Arkansas would be, or South Carolina is a hard place to play. From that standpoint, I do like getting them every year because even though they may be talented, we should have a talent advantage most years, and playing them on the road isn't that threatening. But we'll see how this year goes because we have to go up there this year. But I mean, look, I think all in all, I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for television. Yeah, and to some people, they think every weekend should be, you know, Alabama, Georgia, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Texas, LSU, Georgia, and just like, every good team play every other good team every single week. And, I think they were about as fair as they could be. It's hard to coordinate 16 teams while protecting these rivalries, and I'm excited that they did it and that they actually got something right because this was the best path. Sticking with 8 games, in my opinion, was not feasible. I would have been pretty pissed off if they had stuck with that for another 4 years or however long. But this will make things tougher. I think Notre Dame falling off is like we played them at the right time. Now, with no disrespect to Arizona State or Louisville, there's a bigger gap between A&M and those two teams. That like A&M and Notre Dame are very similar in talent, especially this year. But those two teams are more of what I would want to see scheduled, going forward. Don't schedule Notre Dame or Ohio State or whoever. I would stick to, like someone like Wisconsin or Nebraska, Washington. Those types of teams, while they're good quality opponents, you should most years have at least some of a talent advantage. But I think, there's no benefit to playing this 9-game schedule of SEC teams and, trying to play a top 5 team like an Oregon or an Ohio State, or someone like that every year. JT asked, is 9-3 the new 11-1 in the SEC? I think it's kind of already, it was kind of that way last year, even with just 8 games, which I think last year was kind of an anomaly. But you look around this year, and who do you feel good about running the table? I'm not picking anybody to go 11-1 this year, and damn sure not 12-0. But for a team like A&M, I think it's important to get to 10 wins this year and get into the playoff with this, with this new schedule format on the horizon. I think it's important. And, just looking at next year's schedule, just trying to kind of spitball, underdog favorite, I think you'd be favored in, well, let's say this. I think you would be underdogs at LSU, at Bama, maybe at Oklahoma, and then maybe Texas at home, which is, for a team like A&M, that's a lot. That's a lot. I think we were probably favored in most games last year, at least most of our home games, except for Texas. So I wouldn't say 9-3 is the new 11-1. I think some teams 9-3 could get you in the playoff. which that could happen this year, but I think for sure in the future, a 9-3 A&M versus a 10-2 Indiana, yeah, A&M is beating them out 10 times out of 10 with this kind of schedule. So that's how I feel about that. But that's next year. That's the next 100 years or however long. But we have a game this weekend, and it's a big one. And give me a short break to get settled, and we will get into that. So A&M will host Auburn this weekend, week 5, coming off a bye week. I think this is a very important game, and they're all important in their own way. This one is pretty big to me, and I think it's as close to a must win as there is, and not because you have several chances to get back on the right side of things. You have several opportunities to if you lose to Auburn but you go beat LSU and Missouri, then you're fine. You could still finish with a loss to Texas, be 10-2. You're in the playoff, but for just the way this sets up and the strengths and weaknesses of these teams, A&M just went and got the monkey off their back at Notre Dame, pulled that game out. Should be, you know, confident after that, but you got a week off to rest to heal up. Some, some guys are probably banged up after a big, physical game against a team like that. And we got a week off, and now, I believe that our coaches, you know, took advantage of that, and we'll see how they start out the game on Saturday. But obviously Auburn, along with the storyline of, Jackson Arnold going back to where, the school where he was recruited and signed with and got benched last year, and like he didn't get run out of there, but he was like, hey, like I'm gonna go, look elsewhere for an opportunity, and had to come back and play on that field that he had been with for a couple years, and then lose, and then not just lose, but you know, a lot of folks are saying that they got robbed, or that they easily should have won the game. I don't know if I agree with that. I agree they got robbed. I mean, that's it's very plainly put that what they did on the deception little like touchdown they had with the guy acting like he was coming off the field, that is against the rules in the SEC. Like just flat out illegal. You cannot do it. The ref should have said it. I don't know why they let that stand. It's a very clear violation of what is written in the rule book. So from that standpoint, yes, they got robbed. They also got robbed. There was a deep shot to Cam Coleman, blatant pass interference. The ref's not even looking at it, and it should have been an obvious flag, obvious first down, pass interference, and they just miss it. And the fumble happened. Like I kind of turned the game on right when that happened, so I didn't really get to see much of that. But that's another swing point in the game. But I think down to down, I think OU outplayed them. But I think those big plays that could have been, or maybe some that shouldn't have been, I think Auburn did get robbed. And I think Elko made a good point about the psychology of Auburn, especially on the offensive line. He said, everyone's going to look at Auburn giving up 10 sacks, which was a program record for Oklahoma, for the single game sack record. And, fans will see that and be like, oh, like their offensive line is trash, and A&M should get 7 sacks if Auburn, or if OU got 10. And it doesn't really work that way. Like, those aren't bad players, and, that probably did hurt their pride. They probably are pissed off, and now they're going to come out next week and be like, "Hey, like, we're not giving up 10 sacks again. That's not who we are." And it's kind of like the wounded animal backed into a corner. You're either going to respond and fight, or things start unraveling, and then start to spiral a little bit. I think we get a decent effort. I think it's a really tough spot for Auburn. It really is. Just real quick on the injury front, I know they had some guys go down in that game. The center, number 75, Connor Liu, who is probably the best center in next year's draft. Well, probably the guy at Alabama, Brailsford, but I've seen a lot of love for Connor Liu. He left the game for a few plays, came back in and finished the game, but he is questionable. Defensive end, Amaris Williams, I think he's kind of a rotational guy, but a good player. He's questionable. The running back, Darrell Robinson, he's been out. Horatio Fields is probably their third receiver, number 5. He broke his foot this week in practice. He is out. The probables, Malcolm Simmons, who's number 4, he would probably take, Fields' spot if he can play. Caleb Harris, the safety, and then the two big ones are the starting running back Jeremiah Cobb, and then starting corner, probably their best corner, Jay Crawford. Both number 23, offense and defense, and both probable for this game, but did get banged up a little bit last week. For A&M, Bryce Anderson is out, and Scooby Williams is questionable. I think that's very positive. I think Elko said that Scooby was day to day. I had feared it was a season ender, just because I didn't know. And when they say, "Oh, we're still testing it," I'm like, okay, well, that's a knee. That's probably bad. But I think it was an ankle, and he'll probably be back in a couple weeks. But who's not on this report is Ruben Fothery, the backup tackle, who's a 5th-year senior, and he's been on these reports every week as a either out or questionable or whatever. Elko said he practiced this week. He's not even on here as probable, so he will be available in this game if needed. But I would expect to still see, your regular starting 5 on the offensive line out there. So that's kind of how I think. Just the vibes coming in. I think Auburn's got way bigger, like not way bigger, but they have bigger games on the schedule than I should say they have big games still left to play, like later in the year. As does A&M, but we get the benefit of playing at home again. This is the first big game of the year at Kyle Field. 2:30 time slot. It's going to be rocking in there. The weather is not bad. The high is 90. So they're walking into a hornet's nest, and this is a game that if things have changed and if BAS is gone and this team is for real, then they'll win this game, and I think they do. If they get a better effort than they had at Notre Dame, they should win handily. If it's a similar effort, things are going to be a little bit closer. But yeah, Eric Jackson, shout out Eric, fellow Grosbeck goat. He says, "How do you feel we will do against Auburn? They have a receiver I'm a little worried about." Yeah, I'm a lot worried about him. He's amazing. He's in that class, that 27 draft class with everyone talks about Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams and Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, but Cam Coleman is just as good as either of them, and was committed here. And it sucks you didn't get him, but that was part of the coaching change. That's just kind of it was keep Jimbo and keep Cam Coleman, or get rid of Jimbo, fix your program, but you lose this great receiver. I'll take that option. At the way it's working out right now. But he's incredible. I mean, he's I don't know what he's listed at, but he's north of 6'4". He's quick. He's long-limbed. He's got deep speed, insane catch radius. Even if you've got him covered, you can put the ball in places where he can get it, and the DB can't do anything about it. And he's a really tough assignment. But here's my thing. So we'll start with Auburn's offense. This is not what I would call a efficient offense. I think they're not consistent really at anything. They don't do a good job of sustaining drives. I think the offensive line has good players. I know that 10 sacks is pretty damning, but there's good players on that line, and they're not just we're not just going to run over them, on Saturday. But I think it's the quarterback. He's physically gifted. He's a really talented runner, way better than I thought. Watching him play against Baylor, like he was Auburn's offense against Baylor. He just scrambled every play. I think he never threw the ball, and they scored like 38 points, and but they don't like. That's the success of their running game. Like their backs are fine, but it's nothing like Notre Dame. It's not even the same stratosphere as those running backs, and it's just not it's not a consistent offense. Their offense is, hey, we're going to try to hit big plays to Cam Coleman, and Arnold's going to scramble around a little bit, and we're going to try to find our way into the end zone, and that's the offense. And Cam is probably going to make a couple big catches this weekend, which is totally fine. But what you can't let him do is go Larry Fitzgerald on you like in '04 and give up 250 yards to him. That can't happen, or you will lose. So if he has 5 catches for 120 yards and, 2 touchdowns, that's fine. What's everyone else got? I mean, if I feel pretty good about A&M's offense in this game, which we'll get to that, but for our defense, this is a big opportunity to really get our shit together and go out and dominate from the snap. And I would expect that Coleman will get his in some form or fashion, but it's the other guys. It's Eric Singleton, who's a stud receiver from Georgia Tech that transferred in. Smaller guy, very fast, very explosive. And then with Fields out, he's a probably their third guy right now. But Malcolm Simmons is talented. Perry Thompson is talented. But I like that Elko has two really, like, who did Auburn play at first in week 1? Baylor. So Elko has 2 real games of Auburn film to see like what they do. And honestly, like I watched I watched all the film on the Auburn and OU game, and the offense just doesn't scare me. Like I know Cam's good, but like there's a play. They literally ran a play where they brought in 3 tight ends, a running back, and Cam Coleman, and they max protected 9 guys, and the only route was Cam deep, and they completed it because Oklahoma couldn't cover him. And that's really saying like, hey, this is all we got. Like this is all that we know that we can get done, and it's just you can't let the other guys beat you. And I'm curious to see how Elko plays this. And I think Oklahoma did best when they pressed him. I know it's scary to go press man on a player like that, because if you miss, it may be a house call. But when they were in press man, like I don't think he had a catch. I think it was all they played 15 yards off and then they just ran right by him. And I think that's a losing strategy. So I said last week I was not a fan of the amount of zone coverage that we ran against Notre Dame. If you run it, you got to get home, and you got to blitz and get home. OU blitzed their asses off all day and got in there and got them 10 sacks. So maybe that's what we want to do. Maybe we want to be aggressive and do it that way. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how they do that, because I think Des Ricks can hang with Coleman. He's been the best cover guy on the team by far this year. I think he's got the stuff to play up and play in his grill and not get beat deep. I'm a little worried about Will Lee just with some of the double move stuff that he's been able to get beat by. But I think if you're going to run zone, or if nothing else, like maybe you just put you man up and put a safety on that side of the field wherever Cam is, and then you play straight up everywhere else because I think you can have success that way. Big game for Tyreek Chappelle. He'll probably get the duties for covering Singleton on their team. So it's going to be a battle. But what you can't let happen is you can't let them really run the football and have success. They've got a big O line. It's kind of a bigger, slower unit. So I think our guys up front can occupy enough blockers to let York and I'm assuming Damian Sanford with Scooby out, and Sanford had a great game against Notre Dame. So I would I would definitely stunt and twist up front and throw some blitzes at him. And honestly, I'd probably spy Jackson Arnold the whole game with Sanford. Or I think Sanford or York, but I think York kind of has that green light in coverage to where if he sees an opening in the pass protection, and the quarterback's just sitting back there, then he's going. It's like a delayed blitz type thing that he's done several times. So I'm curious to see how they play him. I can't tell you for sure what they're going to do, but we have the guys to contain their receivers. And then Jackson Arnold, I know OU's a tough place to play. This will be the toughest place, maybe that he's been in. I mean, he played some hard games last year, but with is he still rattled? Is he seeing ghosts after getting sacked 10 times? Is he hurt? You know what I mean? That's he he has an issue with holding on to the football, and unless he figures that out and just turns into this super quick decision maker in a week's time, then I feel good about our defense being able to hold them to enough points to let the offense win the game for us. Let's see here. Let's see. Tim Brewer. Tim asks, which he's another Grosbeck goat, by the way. Are we worried at all about a letdown game, or did the bye week maybe take care of that? That's what I would think. I think last year, and it's flip flopped. Last year you have the big emotional win, comeback win against LSU at home, with the night game with the black jerseys and the quarterback switch and all that stuff, and then you end up beating them pretty bad, and you're shooting up the rankings. Everyone's putting you in the playoff, and A&M's going to walk into the SEC title game, with their schedule, and then the next week you go on the road to a freaking war zone in Columbia, South Carolina, with a super physical team that kind of just beat the crap out of you. And I think it works out much, much better this year, where you had your tough road game, you got it done, you come home, you have plenty of film from yourself and from Auburn to really pour over, and be able to scheme some things up, and work on things. So, and being back at home, I think is a big deal for this team. But I'm not too worried about a letdown. But Juan Alfaro, another GOAT, a good buddy of mine. How do you feel about the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball for the Ags? I think honestly it's pretty even in some aspects. I think to kind of close out the defense against Auburn, they have a good O-line. They really do. I know that you talk about 10 sacks, talk about not a consistent running game. They're not bad players. I think especially the center, the right guard, left tackle are really quite good. But I think it's the inability of the quarterback, and I think Cobb is a good back, but they just don't have that thoroughbred that Auburn usually has, like Jarquez Hunter or Trey Mason or on Johnson or whoever else. And, I think, you know, a big question coming into this season was our defensive tackles. And those guys have done nothing but just ball out the first three games. And I think Notre Dame's offensive line is probably better than Auburn's, even though they look pretty poor against Miami, which Miami may have the best defensive line in the country with maybe the first overall pick with Ruben Bain. But I think that the three guys in the middle can hold their own with Hicks, Regis, and Onyedem, but the ends have to be a lot better with contain on some of the outside runs, and then just get after the quarterback, man. Like I think this needs to be a Cassius Howell type game or a Rylan Kennedy type game with the if you gave me a .5 over under on Rylan Kennedy sacks in the second half, I'd take over. I think he's a closer. You put him in there when the game's on the line, third and long, he's going to get home. So, but it may be blitzes. It may be Sanford or York who has to get it done. But yeah, I think it's a big test for them. I think it's pretty evenly matched. On the other side, as we kind of get into the offense, I think from a pass pro standpoint, I think A&M should do really well against Auburn's D line. Now, this is where I've got more stats on this side of things. Auburn is number 2 in the country in rushing play, basically in rushing success rate allowed. So they do very, very well per play against the run. Some of that is because they played Ball State, who is one of the worst teams in FBS. But you saw OU really couldn't run at all. They had to, get runs kind of on the outsider with Mateer, on scrambles and design stuff and that kind of thing. So, but OU doesn't have the line or the backs that A&M has. So, I don't think you can just move them off the ball. I think the two ends, Falk, who's number 15, and then Crawford, who's 24, are really good run defenders. I know Falk is talked about as a first round pick. I don't really see that yet as a pass rusher. They tried to rush him from the inside against OU. I don't know why they did that. He wasn't very effective doing that, but he honestly wasn't super effective on the outside either. So the tackles, it'll be a challenge, but they should be able to hold their own. The defensive tackles aren't really a threat to really get after the quarterback, and they're bigger guys, but they're not really disruptive or very good movers. So I think that, if you can get the run game going, it's because you're getting those guys sealed off, and not allowing them to penetrate and make plays in the backfield. So to finish off their run defense, it is a good run defense. It's very good. I don't expect we're going to go out there and put up, 200 yards on the ground, because their linebackers and safeties are really downhill players. If they even sniff run, they're coming downhill, which I think, and they're very good at it. They're really good tacklers. They're very physical, but with as much play action as A&M runs, we can really dice them up. And as good as they are against the run from, a success rate standpoint, they're in the 120s against the pass. It's bad. And it's not just down to down, but it's also, they're one of the worst teams in the country in allowing explosive pass plays. Who's one of the best teams in generating explosive pass plays? Texas A&M. So that right there gives me the most hope in this game is, people might see CJ Carr threw for 300 and their receivers aren't any good, and these are the guys at Auburn are way better, and they're going to get cooked. But I don't think it plays out that way, and I think I think Mateer missed some throws in that game where they could have made a lot more plays. I think Marcel playing at home I think he'll be well protected. I think Klein will have a solid game plan. But man, I'd be pretty shocked. Like I think A&M can go out and put up 40 on Auburn. I really do. For a score prediction, I think like a 38-21 type game, 38-20. That's kind of my feel for it because I do think, I mean, unless we just come out just incredibly flat, I think our receivers and you know just the threat of the offense in general is just too much to really you know be be contained by Auburn's defense. The secondary just does not match up very well. But so yeah, I mean that's kind of the recipe here. Like that's what you can that's on the table to go out there, you know, when I think at this window the other big game is LSU Ole Miss, which is a big game. Maybe that gets more eyeballs, but this is a game that and Ohio State Washington, that's the number one team in the country going on the road. But plenty of folks will watch this game, and even if they don't, they will see the result. And at the end of the night, when they open up their phones and see, A&M 38, Auburn 20, they'll be like, "Damn, okay, A&M's for real." And there's more to it than that, but like any win here is good and a must have. But I think there is potential for a win by a pretty comfortable margin, if I'm being honest. Which I always am with you guys. If I felt bad, I would tell you that. But I think, I think all that being said, I think things just set up too well for A&M for them to, come out and play poorly and get beat by this Auburn team. So yeah, and to go back to what I said earlier about how important it is, it's important because I think it's the hardest game of the next four games. I think Mississippi State at home, you should handle them. Florida is a mess right now. DJ Lagway is back in a boot. They're off this week. They play Texas before they play us, and they're probably gonna they're already banged up. They'll probably get banged up even more, from that. And also, that's a home game for us. So then you go to Arkansas, which is a trap game. I think that's the definition of a trap game, where it's on the road. It's after Florida, in between Florida and LSU, and their offense is really, really good. The defense is dreadful. I mean, we'll get to they play Notre Dame this week, which is really weird that they do. But Notre Dame may score 60 on that defense because it's very poor. So I'm saying this is important because it lays the table to be 7-0, maybe knocking on the door of the top five going into Baton Rouge. And, that is a huge, huge chance for this program to take a really big step. And, if you do that and then, not to get ahead of ourselves, but if you go 7-0 and you go and get that monkey off your back, the winning in Baton Rouge monkey off your back, to go to 8-0 with the way the schedule lines up, then we can get really, really excited around here. But that's a month away. I think Auburn is they're a good team. They're not great really at anything, but they're a talented football team. I mean, this sounds funny to say in college because I've heard it said in the NFL, but their players get paid too, and their coaches get paid too, and they're not just going to lay down after losing to Oklahoma, and they're going to come in here and give you a decent shot. So, but it's a huge game, and if we win it, I will be back on here next week saying, man, this sets up really, really well for A&M to do some damage this year. To get into the rest of these, the rest of these games are super interesting. I think LSU Ole Miss has my full attention. Ole Miss actually favored in that one by 1.5, playing at home. LSU, their defense is better than it was. They have not played a real offense yet. Clemson looks very poor. Florida threw 5 picks in that game. I mean, they set records for how bad they were against Miami last week. Ole Miss defense is shaky, but man, they can really score. Uh, they got something with the quarterback, the Ferris State transfer, Trinidad Chambliss. They got receivers and they got Lane Kiffin, and there's some some other stuff there with the LSU linebacker announcing that he is dating Lane Kiffin's daughter this week. I think that's pretty funny and interesting, but I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Ole Miss beat them. I think this the whole league is really interesting because there's not really a team that's good at everything or even good on both sides. Like Georgia and Alabama, I think are competent on both, but like neither one has a very good offensive line, and the quarterbacks are iffy, and it really sets up well for A&M to have a team just full of veterans and in the second year of a coach and returning quarterback and great receivers and a great offensive line, and it's there for the taking. But Ole Miss LSU, very intrigued. They, I'm assuming that Nussmeier is still he's nursing an injury, I think a torso injury that Brian Kelly announced after the Florida game. So who knows? That could be a shootout, but I mean, we haven't really seen it from LSU's offense yet this season, even though they are very talented at quarterback and receiver. Early in the day is Notre Dame at Arkansas. This line is 4.5 Notre Dame's way. I think they beat the absolute tar out of Arkansas. I think this is like a 59-30 type game, or 28 or something. Like Arkansas will score points because go figure. A&M, has to play a pretty healthy Notre Dame team, and their best player, the cornerback Leonard Moore, who we didn't complete any passes on, who picked off Marcel, will be a first round draft pick 2 years from now. He didn't play last week because he got hurt. He was, I think adrenaline is a hell of a drug, and he was able to keep playing against us. But once that faded, he was like, oh shit, like I'm actually hurt. And didn't play last week, may not play this week. So I expect Arkansas to, score some points. But man, if I bet both running backs have 100 plus yards on the ground, I think Notre Dame tears them up and really, lights up the scoreboard. The over under is 64.5. I would smash the over on that. Friday night, Florida State playing the first real team since week one at Virginia. Virginia's quite good. They can they can score some points. I think FSU gets it done, but that's one to watch. USC at Illinois. I like USC in that one. Ohio State, Washington. So September is such a weird month because you have teams that go long stretches playing just horrible teams. Texas and Ohio State both, for example, played each other. Great game, highly competitive. Did nothing for a month. And, like Ohio State is the number one team in the country. I haven't watched them in weeks because they're playing Grambling and whoever else they played. And, they should be able to go and handle Washington just fine. But the Huskies have a quarterback up there, and they got some real receivers. And I like the coach. I think it's a big test for Ohio State, but it should be a good game. But I think Ohio State should be able to get it done over in Seattle. Sorry, I missed this from Colson earlier. He asked about the tight ends. Do you think more involvement from the tight ends this year after the Notre Dame game is something that A&M needs to use more going into the SEC part of the season? I think so, and I think I'm still waiting on Amari Niblack to have that big game. I think I think we've been good. I mean, I talked more about Auburn's defense than I did our offense. But I think we played pretty well so far. There's still another gear we can hit with some of the things that we can draw up and put out there. You know, guys like Terry Bussey and Ashton Bethel Roman only have a handful of catches, apiece. I think one of them is going to break out and have a huge game at some point. I think, they they drew one up against Notre Dame where it would have been a 40+ yard gain to Nyblack. Um, he he presents something that we don't really have anywhere else on the team. So I think I would continue to look for. I mean, there's three guys in there that we got that can all play, and they can all block, they can all catch and run, and I think it just kind of depends on how Colin Klein wants to attack defenses, but I do think that it's something to certainly look for going forward. But our bread and butter every week is going to be number one and number seven, and number 10, being a point guard and getting the ball into their hands and threatening on the ground with his mobility, and the running backs doing their thing. So that's the like there's not really if if I said it last week, but if Marcel, I'm looking for that deep ball this game because I think their corners are very pedestrian, and you know Casey and Craver and those guys can really they'll probably have a chance to get deep and be open. And if Marcel figures that out, this offense is going to be really damn hard to stop for anybody. So that's what, like, things are good right now. They could be better. They could be much better. I think, you know, down to down, drive to drive consistency could improve. But right now it's just, you know, the big plays that we make are huge plays. They're big, explosive, plays. And once we get into the red zone, we're pretty damn good at finding, at getting sevens instead of threes. So I think it's super high, and I think we're looking for a next step here against Auburn. Elsewhere, Indiana at Iowa. I think I dog on Indiana because they don't play anybody, but they are good. They should wax Iowa. Um, the two night games are the really big ones. The freaking I forget what the UFC term is, but these are two prize fights between some of the very best teams in the sport, and programs in the sport. Oregon at Penn State. 6:30 gets a whiteout. Penn State is they have to be just amped to the gills on to win this game. Um, I It's really tough. Like, I think neither one of these teams has played anybody with a pulse. Um, and Oregon has played. I guess you can say they've played Power Five teams. Like, they played Oklahoma State, who just fired their coach. They played Northwestern, who's not very good. Um, Penn State has played nobody. I mean, nobody. So we really have no idea what either one of them is. Um, I wanted to say Oregon early in the week, but I, I just I think they're a little inflated by beating some of the teams down. That, like, I think the 70 points against Oklahoma State is doing a lot of it's carrying a lot of weight for them right now. But and they've looked good in the other games too. But um, I don't know, their defense was really just fine last year. It wasn't anything special. And you know, does Penn State, like, can they finally throw the football? Like, I know they can run it and they can do creative stuff. With the run game. They have better receivers. Can they use them? Can they get them the football? We don't know, but I know vibes favor Oregon because they've just looked like a better team for the last 2 years. But I think I lean Penn State getting the win. Bama and Georgia, I have no idea. I think Georgia should have lost to Tennessee. They kind of got lucky to pull that one out. I think Bama, you know, even though they've played much lesser teams since week one, the quarterback looks much better. Ty Simpson has played incredible through the last couple games, and really gotten back on track. I don't think Georgia has the best corners in the world. I think Tennessee was able to exploit that. I was listening to Cover Three earlier today, and he's like, "Yeah, like neither team has a good offensive line, and can really protect the quarterback consistently." So, but like neither one really has the true blue like first round pick pass rusher. So, it's interesting. I mean, I would lean Georgia, being the home team there, but man, I just don't know. I would the the Florida State game is still too recent in my mind, and yeah. So if I have a gun in my head, I'm picking Georgia, but I don't feel good about it. But man, I can't wait uh, to just really just take all of this in. I think it's a big turning point for the season, and a lot of things are going to be. We still know very little about anybody. Like we only have a handful of games. Some people play, full throttle. Some treat them like scrimmages. All the numbers are, you know, it's not a real representation of what these teams are, and we just don't know. And it's freaking exciting. I love weekends like this where you have, some of the best teams playing each other, some really good games sprinkled in. Um, I want to see what LSU's like. That's a big hurdle on this schedule. You know, go out and beat Auburn. See what LSU does. If they, get lit up by Ole Miss, does Arkansas get beat down by Notre Dame so bad that they fire Pittman and put in Petrino as the interim? Um, that game's interesting. Playing in Fayetteville. So um, it's a lot going on. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I do. Um, Man, this has been one of the most engaging and definitely most live listener streams that I've had. Um, JT, Tim, Eric, Colson, Juan, uh, Brian Graham, like, uh, thank you guys for hopping in here. I know things are exciting right now. This is a big game, big week. Um, we're all fired up about about this weekend. So um, hopefully there's more good times on the schedule this year, and we'll be right here every Wednesday at 8 to break it down. So um, appreciate you guys so much. Can't thank you enough. If you're going to the game, yell loud, wear some sunscreen, and beat the hell out of Auburn. We'll talk to you next week.